The Hungry Club Forum began as a secret initiative of the Butler Street YMCA in Atlanta. It was a place where sympathetic white politicians could meet out of the public eye with local black leaders who were excluded from many of the city's civic organizations. King, an Atlanta native, addressed the club on May the 10th, 1967. He acknowledged that progress had been made in civil rights, but warned that the evils of racism, poverty, and the Vietnam War endangered further gains for Black Americans. I'll be back. Hey everyone, welcome back. To those who are returning, new folks, welcome. Let's just jump into this. I stumbled across some articles by accident. I wasn't even looking for them. I didn't even know they were published. But there are several articles circulating about Malcolm X's daughters suing the FBI, the CIA, and New York City for his unaliving. I was wondering or trying to figure out why there isn't much talk about it other than the articles. I haven't heard anyone talking about it. I don't know if everybody's focus is on Diddy and, other news is irrelevant, but I'm going to talk about it because I feel it's very important. And, a lot of our people who look like us, look like me, who is trying to make a difference in this American society just happen to always get, taken out of here. So it's time for America to explain a lot. But before we get into this article about Malcolm X's daughters demanding that their father be vindicated, I want to briefly discuss a speech or read a speech that Malcolm X delivered in New York City in 1964. Then we're going to go into, like I said, talk about his daughters suing those two agencies in the city. Let's get on with it. On April the 8th, 1964, Malcolm X delivered a speech at the Militant Labor Forum in New York City that stressed the need for African Americans to forge a radical path for liberation through their connection with other Africans around the globe. Entitled, "The Black Revolution is a Part of Worldwide Struggle," the speech was delivered in the context of the 75th day filibuster of Republican senators against the impending Civil Rights Act of '64. This act, which would eventually pass in June '64, was to end segregation and outlaw discrimination on the basis of race, gender, sex, and religion. But Malcolm X saw the demand for civil rights as misguided, as he believed it would lead to the erosion of Black American political power. While calling out the treachery and deception of Democrats and white liberals, Malcolm argued that the Black leaders calling for civil rights were spending their time trying to prove they are Americans. Their thinking, he stated, is usually domestic, confined to the boundaries of America. As such, they always saw themselves as minority, needing to beg a more powerful majority for their rights. Instead of civil rights, Malcolm X called for human rights. Those who fight for human rights, he stated, don't look upon themselves as Americans. They look upon themselves as part of dark mankind. Black folks are part of a global majority. White America, along with the white West, is actually a small group wielding an outsized power. The fight for human rights connects African Americans to the larger Black and colonial world. In 64, Malcolm saw many black Americans waking up to the deceit of the Democrats and futility of civil rights in the country, but he believed they needed to make an internationalist turn. He saw black people as the fuse that would light America's racial powder keg, which would in turn ignite a worldwide powder keg. Friends and enemies, tonight. Did you hear how he opened his speech up? Could you imagine going somewhere and having to do a speech and you open it up that way? That is bold right there. Let's continue. Friends and enemies, tonight I hope that we have a little fireside chat with as few sparks as possible being tossed around, especially because of the very explosive condition that the world is in today. Sometimes when a person's house is on fire and someone comes in yelling fire instead of the person who is awakened by the yell being thankful, he makes the mistake of charging the one who awakened him with having set the fire. I hope that this little conversation tonight about the Black Revolution won't cause many of you to accuse us of igniting it when you find it at your doorstep. I'm still a Muslim. That is my religion. It's still Islam. I still believe that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. That just happens to be my personal religion, but in the capacity which I am functioning in today, I have no intention of mixing my religion with the problems of 22 million black people in this country. Just as it's possible for a great man whom I greatly respect, Ben Bella, to be a Muslim and still be a nationalist, and another one whom I greatly respect, Gamal Nasser, to be a Muslim and still be a nationalist. It was nationalism which enabled them to gain freedom for their people. I'm still a Muslim, but I'm also a nationalist, meaning that my political philosophy is black nationalism. My economic philosophy is black nationalism. My social philosophy is black nationalism. And when I say that this philosophy is black nationalism, to me, this means that the political philosophy of black nationalism is that which is designed to encourage our people, the black people, to gain complete control over the politics and politicians of our own community. Our economic philosophy is that we should gain economic control over the economy of our own community, the businesses and the other things which create employment so that we can provide jobs for our own people instead of having to picket and boycott and beg someone else for a job. Ooh. And in short, our social philosophy means that we feel that it is time to get together among our own kind and eliminate the evils that are destroying the moral fiber of our society, like drug addiction, drunkenness, adultery that leads to an abundance of bastard children, welfare problems. We believe that we should lift the level or the standard of our own society to a higher level wherein we will be satisfied and then not inclined toward pushing ourselves into other societies where we are not wanted. All that aside, tonight we are dealing with the Black Revolution. During recent years, there has been much talk about a population explosion, and whenever they are speaking of the population explosion, in my opinion, they are referring primarily to the people in Asia or in Africa, the black, brown, red, and yellow people. It is seen by people of the West that as soon as the standard of living is raised in Africa and Asia, automatically the people begin to reproduce abundantly. And there has been a great deal of fear engendered by this in the minds of the people of the West, who happen to be on this earth a very small minority. In fact, in most of the thinking and planning of whites in the West today, it's easy to see the fear in their minds and conscious minds and subconscious minds that the masses of dark people in the West and the East, rather who already outnumber them, will continue to increase and multiply and grow until they eventually overrun the people of the West like a human sea, a human tide, a human flood. And the fear of this can be seen in the minds and the actions of most of the people here in the West in practically everything they do. It governs political views, and it governs their economic views, and it governs most of their attitudes toward the present society. And if what I just read, if you don't still see it today, in the propaganda that a lot of these politicians spew, mainly the Democrats, and the Republicans have their crappy ways too. Let's continue. I was listening to Everett Dirksen, the senator from Illinois and Washington, D.C., filibustering the Civil Rights Bill. And the one thing that he kept stressing over and over and over was that if this bill is passed, it would change the social structure of America. Well, I know what he's getting at, and I think that most other people today, and especially our people, know what is meant when these whites who filibuster these bills and express fears of changes in the social structure, our people are beginning to realize what they mean. Just as we can see that all over the world, one of the main problems facing the West is race. Likewise, here in America today, most of your Negro leaders, as well as the whites, agree that in '64 itself appears to be one of the most explosive years yet in the history of America on the racial front, on the racial scene. Not only is this racial explosion probably to take place in America, but all of the ingredients for this racial explosion in America to blossom into a worldwide racial explosion presents themselves right here in front of us. America's racial powder keg, in short, can actually fuse or ignite a worldwide powder keg. And whites in this country who are still complacent when they see the possibilities of racial strife getting out of hand, and you are complacent simply because you think you outnumbered the racial minority in this country. What you have to bear in mind is wherein you might outnumber us in this country, you don't outnumber us all over the earth. And any kind of racial explosion that takes place in this country today in 1964 is not a racial explosion that can be confined to the shores of America. It is a racial explosion that can ignite the racial powder keg that exists all over the planet that we call Earth. Now, I think that nobody would disagree that the dark masses of Africa and Asia and Latin America are already seething with bitterness, animosity, hostility, unrest, and impatience with the racial intolerance that they themselves have experienced at the hands of the white West. And just as they themselves have the ingredients of hostility toward the West in general, here we also have 22 million African Americans, black, brown, red, and yellow people in this country who are also seething with bitterness and impatience and hostility and animosity at the racial intolerance, not only of the white West, but of white America in particular. Our people are becoming more politically mature. Their eyes are coming open. They're beginning to see the trend in all of the American politics today. They notice that every time there is an election, it is so close among whites that they have to count the votes over again. This happened in Massachusetts when they were running for governor. This happened in Rhode Island. It happened in Minnesota and other places. And it happened in the election between Kennedy and Nixon. Things are so close that any minority that has a block vote can swing it either way. And I think that most students of political science agree that it was the 80% support that Kennedy got from the black man in this country that enabled him to sit in the White House. Sat there for 4 years and the Negro was still in the doghouse. The same ones that we put in the White House have continued to keep us in the doghouse. The Negro can see that he holds the balance of power in this country politically. He still does today. Isn't it amazing how 1 minute they try to shoot black folks down like they ain't nothing, like they are less than dog feces, and then the next minute they come and beg you for and down low threaten you for your political support? Let's continue. It is he who puts in office the one who gets in office. Yet when the Negro helps that person get in office, the Negro gets nothing in return. And what Malcolm X is saying the same thing that people have been repeating to black folks every 4 years. Let's continue. All he gets is a few appointments, a few hand-picked Uncle Tom handkerchief head Negroes are given big jobs in Washington, D.C., and then those Negroes come back and try to make us think that that administration is going to lead us to the promised land of integration. And the only ones whose problems have been solved have been those hand-picked Negroes. A few big Negroes got jobs who didn't even need the jobs. They already were working. But the masses of black people are still unemployed. The present administration, the Democratic administration, has been down there for 4 years. Yet no meaningful legislation has been passed by them that propose to benefit black people in this country, despite the fact that in the House they have 257 Democrats and only 177 are Republicans. They control 2/3 of the House. In the Senate there are 67 Democrats and only 33 Republicans. The Democrats control 2/3 of the government, and it is the Negroes who puts them in a position to control the government. Yet they give the Negroes nothing in return but a few handouts in the form of appointments that are only used as window dressing to make it appear that the problem is being solved. And ain't too much I gotta say. This man is speaking like today. He's talking to you black folks today. Didn't we just have a big election? Didn't you have a lot of content creators saying, hey, I got some information that I need to bring to your attention about this person that you're trying to vote for? And then I also did a few videos saying whoever you put in office, black folks, or vote to put in office, black folks, demand something. Let's go on. That it went on. His speech is longer than what I read. I just took a little bit out of it and read it for you guys, and I will gladly put the link in the description. Yeah, go ahead and read it and see that what he said in 64 still applies today in 2024, and that is so sad. So now let's go into the interview or the article. Let's go into the article about his daughters, Malcolm X's daughters, making a stand for their father. The family of the unalived black civil rights activist Malcolm X is suing the FBI, the CIA, and the New York Police Department for $100 million, accusing them of having a role in his death. The lawsuit says that agencies were involved in the plot and failed to stop the killing. We believe that they all conspired to assassinate Malcolm X, one of the greatest thought leaders of the 20th century. Ben Crump, a civil rights attorney who was representing the family, said at a news conference, Malcolm X was unalived in 1965 when 3 armed men shot him 21 times as he was preparing to speak in New York. The lawsuit alleges that a corrupt, unlawful, and unconstitutional relationship between law enforcement and the ruthless killers allowed the unaliving. A link between the agencies and the killers went unchecked for many years and was actively concealed, condoned, protected, and facilitated by government agencies, the lawsuit says. It says the New York PD, coordinating with the agencies, also detained members of Malcolm X's security team days before the shooting and intentionally removed their officers from inside the ballroom where he was shot. Federal agents, including undercover operatives, were in the ballroom during the assassination and took no steps to intervene, the lawsuit alleges. The family announced their intention to sue last year. The NYPD said it will decline comment on pending litigation, and the CIA did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The FBI told the Associated Press that it was its standard practice not to comment on litigation. Malcolm X was a lead spokesman for the Nation of Islam, which advocated separatism for Black Americans before his acrimonious split from the organization. He was 39 when he was killed. One man, a Nation of Islam member, confessed to killing him. In 2021, 2 men convicted of killing him had their convictions thrown out after a New York State judge declared there had been a miscarriage of justice. The 2 men were later fully exonerated after New York's Attorney General found prosecutors had withheld evidence that would have probably cleared them of the murder. Family of the wrongly convicted men sued and won $26 million from New York City and $10 million from New York State. You know what? I think if anyone who really studies history, especially history in this country, for people who look like me, you would have to, if you're looking and studying it with a clear mind, meaning you're not being biased, you're not being prejudiced, you're just studying because you want to know, you will see that out of these men and women who were like imprisoned or unalived, anytime a man or woman speaks to uplift Black people, there's a fear that comes. They don't want you waking Black folks up or having the audacity to lift them up where they will actually start respecting themselves, and demanding that you respect them. So what they do is they set out to sabotage them. They set out to watch everything they do and even infiltrate them with people who look like them to help take them down inwardly. Then they set them up to take them out. And then by them assassinating all these Black leaders, you instill a strong fear in the Black community. They only go so far because they don't want to be taken out. That's kind of why Black people find themselves on a hamster wheel, because you're only willing to go so far because of fear. And it is fear that makes our people make the wrong decisions over and over again. You're going to stay stuck. Once you wake up and say, I'm not going to be afraid, and mean it, there's nothing they can do to stop you. Because actually it's their fear that comes on you. They are the ones who are afraid. They're afraid of you waking up, taking your position. Okay. Well, like I said, the Malcolm X speech that he did in 1964 said is nothing else I can say. I don't even need to add anything to the man's speech. What he said is still being applied. You can apply it today. It was a great speech. And he was saying it to hopefully open his people eyes up. Yeah. That's about all I can say right now. If you look at the majority of my videos, you hear me saying things to you black folks. And not just black folks, those who really want to, who are not afraid to admit that they see the continuous injustices being shoved against black people in this country. If you sincerely want to admit it and know that it's true, because you see it and you've taken time out to see it with your own eyes, I'm talking to you too. Because your silence is worse than the people who are committing the injustices against black folks. Like I see most of the time, and I'm talking to you, white America, most of the time you guys see the injustices before we do. Because people feel comfortable around people who look like them. And whether they know what you get down with or not, or what you like or don't know or don't like, they have no problems telling you how they feel and what they're going to do and who they're going to hire and who they're going to fire and why. They'll tell you first before we find out. So how many of you have heard plots and plans against people who look like me just simply because they look like me? And yet you did nothing. You just went home, took care of your family, and was like, it's none of my business. You're the one who's helping to keep it going because you're not saying anything. That's why so much evil is going on in this world, in this country, because people don't say anything. Diddy would not been able to do the things he did if you didn't have people covering for him because of money. And the people want to say, well, money is evil. No, it's not evil. It's the lust. It's the lust these people have for money. And the love they have for money made them push all their morals and rights, what they knew was right and wrong, push it aside just for money. And I guarantee you that money didn't bring them any peace, and that money, they spent it faster than when they earned it honestly. Get some money dishonestly and see how fast that money go. Okay, thank you, folks. I'm shutting down the shop. Thank you so much. Those who listened to the entire video, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And be safe, folks. I will see you in the next video. Have a good day.